Alright, today we're having a look at Coco's Adventure by Doctor Who Data, Bella Iris, Freaky, Putty Doke, and XDMS Matt X. Alright, so here we are in Coco's Adventure by Doctor Who Data and friends. There's a lot of them. We just got through a cutscene. It was 20 minutes long. It's quite an ambitious cutscene. So basically, Coco here fell in love with the princess of Beartown. It's already escaped me. I should have written down in the notes. The princess was called back by her father, who has been put under hypnotic control by the Lord Baron Teddyvile. Which, I mean, the name should probably, let you know that things are going to be bad. She's got a rat that's tasked us to save her. We've got to go find the wizard in the swamp. Somebody in the swamp's going to help us out. Okay. Now, I wonder if we could skip that intro cutscene. It is nice, and I mean, it's pretty well done. The voice acting's not too bad. But it's a lot. It's an awful lot to have to do this, if that needs to be done each time. Like in the swamp here. Is appropriately spooky, and I appreciate that. Okay. Clearly, the swamp water is problematic. And by problematic, I mean it'll kill us. So now I'm going to be super paranoid about every jump. I actually kind of like it that our outfit glows. It makes it easier to keep an eye on the character on screen. There's music, but in a, oh, fudge. In a bit of a difference from what we usually get in music in levels, this is actually almost a little bit too soft. A lot of times music in Dreams Creations is too loud, but I think maybe they could probably pop this up just a wee bit. Especially since the Teddy Bear Picnic song in the intro, that intro bit that we just saw was so clearly heard. And the vocal work as well is I don't want to say it's loud, it's not like over loud, anything like that, but it's very clear, the volume is balanced pretty well, so I'm a bit surprised that the music here is so soft. Unless that's just the way they want it to be. Double X for double jump. It seems like a lot of creations, and this is not a knock against, I don't want to give the impression that it is. I love these plants, these are really nice looking plants. A lot of creations are using some pretty standard control schemes, which is good because you can go from one creation to the other. And usually X is going to be double jump. You can't say that, with certainty. And it is good to put a prompt up just so folks know, but it looks like we're kind of cohering, at least early on, into... Excuse me? That jump seems like it should be too far, but it just might be... Hi. Oh, I see. Okay, I see what the problem was. Kind of. Alright, let's not screw this up. I probably don't need to double jump quite so often. But like any game that gives me a double jump, I always get really paranoid that I'm going to need it, and so I just double jump all the time. I wonder if we have checkpoints, and I bet that will attempt to kill me. That is such a nice looking Venus flytrap though. Hopefully they're not opening their mouths too often. Venus flytraps, they can only do that so many times. They've only got so much stored energy. So if you have a pet Venus flytrap, don't make it open and close its mouth unnecessarily. Double jump before you hit bouncy objects will make it so you're unable to double jump after you hit the bouncy object. I get ya. I'm really liking the lighting here. I think that needs to be pointed out. It's really slick looking. We'll make it. We made it. We made it. Know why? Because we are a platforming queen. I know. Modesty, modesty is a good look in a queen, but at the same time... Okay, so apparently that was too far. Now I wonder if those glowy... Hi, the glowy flowers, that was a snake. I saw a snake. Those glowy flowers are supposed to be a checkpoint? Because we're spawning right near them. But part of the issue is because everything is kind of glowy. It's a little hard to say. It doesn't stand out when everything, when everything glows. I guess we're just gonna have to process of elimination that, excuse me? Did I? Ah! Oh my god, we've only got 9 seconds left? Come on! I was having a good time with this. We're gonna have to go back to the hub. Let me just get back... Fudge. We're gonna have to go back to the hub, but we'll talk about there. We'll see... Hi? Yes, we'll see you there. See ya! Alright, we're back. And Coco's Adventure by Doctor Who Data, Bella Iris, Freaky, Putty Doke, and XDMS Matt X. And I'd say it's a bit of a soft at times, yellow square. There were a lot of things that I enjoyed about the level. There were issues that I had with the level. Some of those issues, maybe your mileage may vary. It may depend on kind of what your situation is like and what you enjoy. But I do think it's clear a lot of work has gone in this level, and it is a good level. There are definitely points to it that should be praised. But as we said in the video, you've got kind of actually a beefy story going on. The intro cutscene is about almost 20 minutes long. It's a well done cutscene for the most part. I enjoyed the voice acting, although some of it is a little bit hit or miss. There seem to be varying levels of professionalism in that voice acting. I'm not going to knock points in that regard. From my own experience, and I'm not a particularly good voice actor myself, so from my own experience, I know it can be hard to nail a voice that you want to be doing, and I do appreciate the work that's gone into getting the voices to where they are. But we follow the adventures of Coco. Coco has fallen in love with the princess of the kingdom, Snowball, who's been summoned away by the evil Baron Lord Teddy Vile, or Lord Baron Teddy Vile, who's put her father under a spell and wants to force her to marry him. He calls it a reasonable demand. It doesn't seem very reasonable. I bet he's the kind of guy that would force the wife to take his name, even though maybe she wants to keep her own for significance or professional reasons. But of course she denies him, and she denies his hypnotic attacks because she is strong of heart. Delivers a letter to Coco, asking Coco to come save her through the offices of a small mouse named Twitchy. I would like to know the mouse's name for itself. I mean, it seems a little bit presumptuous for Snowball to just up and name him Twitchy, but, you know, what do I know? What do I know? And that brings us to our adventure. We start out in not exactly a hub, but there's a pair of paths, one towards the castle, the town, one towards the swamp, and our journey takes us in this section to the swamp, and that's as much as has been completed so far. The swamp section as well is fairly beefy. It was around like 38 or 40 minutes for me, so from what's been put together so far, you're looking at about an hour's worth of gameplay, and that may or may not work for you. I lucked out that I had a day off yesterday that I could actually devote that much time to playing the level, but it may be an issue for some players, especially some players who may be in school doing a lot of studying, or may be out of school doing a lot of working, such as myself. But that is kind of a broader point for dreams, and somebody had kind of put up on Reddit, you know, what's a good time for a dream? How long should dreams be? Personally speaking myself, I think like 10 to 15 minutes is really, really good. It gives it a sense of heft, a sense that it's got a lot going on in it. It's not overly short, although I do personally like really short creations, but it's not necessarily overly long. But it seems like, you know, some creators and some teams are actually working to make game level games in Dreams, and that's really, really cool that Dreams allows us to do that. But you know, your mileage may vary as to how much time you want to devote. At least with this creation, there is a roadmap that you can go in. My cameras are just nuts. You can go in and kind of check the section that you want to play if you've gotten to a certain point and had to leave the actual creation. But now, to go into the actual game itself, and what we've got in the swamp area is kind of your basic tutorial early section in one of these 3D platforming games. I think it handles it fairly well. It presents your base abilities to you. It lets you build up your skill with those abilities. It's not largely overly challenging, except for a couple of points that are compounded by an issue that we're going to talk about in a minute. But for the most part, you're not going to need to be, you know, top level platformer to get through this section. Now, if the Doctor Who dated team, you know, builds from here, it may get more and more difficult as time goes on. But I think that this is something that most players should be able to engage with at first. I really liked the look of the swamp and the poppiness of the neon plants. I thought that was really, really cool. It made them stand out. It gave a little bit of depth to the swamp, because otherwise I think the swamp would have been too dark. And one issue that I found in the non-plant stuff, particularly the water and the ground in the first swamp section that you're going to be in, I found that there really wasn't quite enough contrast between the colors. Now, diegetically speaking, that makes a lot of sense, but from a gameplay standpoint, it did make it a little bit difficult sometimes for me, where I found myself basically just walking into the water and dying. So that was a bit of an issue. Pertaining to dying as well, I was never really sure where the checkpoints were, because there was no easily noticeable visual aspect to the checkpoints. Now, when I was playing and not recording my voice, and I could hear the little the dreams check part do sound that would go off, so I knew that there was a checkpoint there, but it was hard to track it in the environment, and I think I would have liked to have seen some visual aspect there, maybe a flower blooming or a cloud of fireflies that would swarm up, and then when you get to the next checkpoint, then that previous checkpoint's visual aspect could disappear. The flower could curl up and the light would turn off or something like that. But something that players could track it in the environment, so that they would easily be able to tell, you know, how much progress is being gambled on this next gameplay section. How careful do they need to be in order to not lose a ton of progress? Or is it a little bit safer? Is there a checkpoint coming up that we could see close in the distance? I think that would help, because the visual the auditory aspect is a little bit too soft, and it's a little bit too easy to miss. At least that's something that I noticed. Talking visuals, and we've got a lot of work that's been done in the plants. We've also got a fair amount of work I found in the sculpt for the animals in the level as well. And as base sculptures, they look really nice. You've got your frogs, and you've got a snake, and there's a crocodile and some fish, and that's really cool. They look well done. It looks like a lot of work's been put into them. But one issue that I found with them is that they are very static. I stood on the crocodile's head, and it just didn't do anything. It didn't move, it didn't bob, it didn't look up, it didn't try to eat me, which was nice. I didn't want to get eaten. But it was just kind of there. It was almost like a statue, not something that really felt a part of the environment, certainly not something that felt alive. Those frogs do kind of move, in the sense that they shoot their tongue out at you. But the actual frog body doesn't have any movement. There's no animation to it when it does that. Those frogs are jerks, though, because they... it's hard to anticipate, and this is cool, actually. This is not a negative point, but it's kind of hard to anticipate when the tongue is going to shoot out, and I got knocked into the soup quite often. It was actually a challenging point of the gameplay, and I appreciated that. I thought that was pretty cool. Now, one big issue that I had with this, and it's a big issue that I have with, honestly, a lot of creations that I've seen in Dreams so far, particularly the 3D platformers, and I'm said it before, I hope you're not getting tired of it, but I'll probably say it again in the future, and that's the free-floating cameras. The cameras that you have absolute control over with your right directional stick. Very, very rarely do I find them to add anything to the gameplay or the experience, and often I find them just to present an extra hindrance to whatever obstacle section that I am dealing with at the moment. The biggest example of this I found was when you're dealing with the flying fish section, and that's actually, the fish look really cool, and the section should be an interesting obstacle. You've got to jump on these fish, and there's going to be like other fish that will be jumping out of the water that you're going to have to jump onto as your current fish is diving into the water. But because the camera is free floating, it's really easy to get in situations where you don't see where the next fish is coming from, and you end up missing your jump. So you're kind of not only having to control where you're jumping and the timing of your jumps, but you're also swinging the camera around while you're doing that to try to track where the next fish is going to be coming from. And I found that to be unnecessarily frustrating and unnecessarily difficult, and that section almost had me pull this down into orange diamond territory. And I think even the creators recognized how frustrating that section was, because what they did was they ended up putting an easy mode if you died a couple of times, where they have like a lily pad path that pops up that you can take to avoid that fish section altogether. And that to me is a sign that there has been some failure in the design process, that you expect the players to get frustrated so badly that you feel you need to add this kind of easy mode through. I appreciate that there was an alternate path, because if there had not been an alternate path, I probably would have stopped the level. But having locked cameras in that section, I think would have reduced the frustration of it and the difficulty of it by an order of magnitude, because as a creator you can control what the player is going to be looking at any given time and make sure that the field of view is going to be including, for example here, the next fish that the players are going to have to be jumping across. So to have cameras and camera transitions there so that they're seeing what you need them to see. And I think that's a skill that I haven't seen on display in an awful lot of these 3D platformers in Dreams, and I do hope that the community starts to build around that. Another example that we see of that, there's a really cool section that I liked where you're going up these trees and there's kind of corkscrewing fungi on the outside of the tree that act as platforms, and they look really nice. That type of fungus that doesn't get a lot of love, I think, in video games. We usually see the more mushroomy style fungi. This one is really cool, but because it's rotating around the tree, you have to keep rotating your camera to keep up with it so that you could see the next platform in line. And again, I don't think that's really necessary to have the camera track the player from the side under the control of the creator, not under the control of the player. And it just is one less thing for the player to have to deal with. In that tree section, there was another bit that I liked, although I did find it to be a little bit difficult. The jumping onto the lanterns, that was all really cool. Kind of getting your swing correct so that you're getting to the next lantern, to where you're getting to where you need to be, was a little bit tricky, but it was fun. It was a really good time. So, you go through the swamp. I'm actually kind of put both halves of the swamp all in one piece, but you go through the swamp, you find the wizard. The wizard's got, I think, probably the best, most professional sounding voice acting in the game. We'll give him a little bit of a listen here.
Waving your hands in front of somebody's face is rude. Hasn't anyone ever told you that?
Pretty cool sounding, yeah? I like the wizard's voice acting a lot, to be perfectly honest. But he tasks you with this quest to go find the glowing branch, go back into the swamp, find the glowing branch, bring it back to the wizard. He combines it with your magical power of heart, because that's a thing. Captain Planet taught us that specifically was a thing. And then the level, or the creation, ends at that point. And there's a hi, brain, please. There's a notice from the Doctor Who data team that says, they'll be working on this more. They're going to be putting more stages out in this creation to eventually fill it into a full story. And who knows how long it's going to be at that point. It could be 2 or 3 hours. I could see that built up pretty easily. And there you go. That's our Coco's adventure. I think it's really good. I think there are definitely things that could be built on. I know I talked a lot about the camera, but I'm going to talk a lot about the camera until we get that kind of sorted out as a community. But I think that there's an enjoyment to be had in this level. You can have fun being Coco. Coco's got some pretty good actual movement I found. Something interesting, because a lot of times we find in these 3D platformers and dreams that the movement is well too zippy, that you just kind of fly across hither and yon. They actually slowed down Coco's movement and kind of lowered the jump height, and I thought that worked really well with the character. That, Coco's a big old bear. He's tromping around in the forest. We don't want Coco to be zippy. We want Coco to have heft to him. And I think that the little choice there of slowing down the character model adds a lot to the character itself. I've just been talking and talking, and I apologize, and I still haven't figured out how to get this music to loop, so that's something that we're going to be working on in the future. But that pretty much does it for us here at this Go About. Doctor Who Data Team, you've done a great job, and I look forward very much to seeing more from you in the future. But that does it for us here, this Go About. From me, Disco, here in Osaka, to all of you out there, wherever you may happen to be, thank you, arigato, arigasamariota, sayonara, see you. That wasn't intended. Sayonara, see you, and ciao.